Hey everyone, even though it's only October, it's time to start prepping for New Year's. Figure out what techniques we need and what'll look good for our New Year's decorations. I want to show you a very simple technique, like a cloud explosion. Nothing fancy, just simple. I did it without dry flowers, just with stones and resins from Art Pro. But today I'll give you a bit of a challenge and you decide if you like it better with dry flowers with fillers or just plain with resin and stones. So I've mixed the resin. If you want to make a basic cloud with resin, this technique doesn't require you to separate the resin or work in stages, but to make it with dry flowers, well, you'll have to take 2 steps. First, pour a thin layer, lay out your dry flowers composition in, pearl sparkles and stones. Wait about 3 hours for the resin to become viscous, really thick, but you don't have to wait for it to polymerize fully. But if we don't wait and start pouring, all our flowers will float, the resin will leak beneath, it'll be a mess. So first, layer. Pour a thin layer of resin to get good bubbles. Heat it up first before you start. I place it near a heater, or you can heat up closed bottles under hot water, of course. Under hot water for 10 minutes, Art Pro gives really awesome bubbles. You can make this. Layer crystal clear with no bubbles. I chose it because it's medium in viscosity, better for the flowers. Now pour a thin puddle on the little torch to remove bubbles. Be really careful with the bubbles. Keep the flame low and not too close to the surface. It's easy to burn the resin and make yellow stains, ruining your work. So for jewelry pours, I'd recommend a small torch, even comes in a kit. Rain Pro has one too, but as I do bigger projects, I use a big construction torch, but I keep the flame low while carefully removing bubbles. Meditative, huh? Now for the fun part, arranging the glitters, stones. Random sprinkling can work too, but let's make it look good. Stick to golden ratio. Sprinkle the sequins, mother of pearl, in an orderly fashion. Now let's pull on the glove. Make a small spread on top, just a little on the finger. There'll be, not like in the first pour with gold, but with rose gold and silver crumbs. I put little fairies in feet, in wings, a little in the hairdo. There you go. Now laying out the dry flowers, as my composition will be filled with more resin. I lay out the dry flowers, so I won't fill the whole decoration with flowers, just a few. I make flat and 3D dried flowers, usually white ones because that's my thing. It's a winter vibe. You can blend any colors together. Artistic liberties included. You still have time to collect flowers, dry them in silica gel or in the good old desiccant. If you want good results, you got to dry them in professional silica, a book, or between napkins or cotton discs. Depends on your dried flowers. I have tons. I have plenty of videos showing how I dry flowers in the my book, silica, or semolina. There's lots of useful stuff on YouTube. Step right in. You see, no hard set rules here. I simply set down the top layer. For dry flowers, if we talk about the golden ratio, you got to compartmentalize. Bring some color saturation. You look at your toys, your wall piece, your clock, your ceiling, and decide where you want the pattern. It can be at the top, the bottom part's free, or it can be along both sides with the middle free, or the end stretch free, or dense distribution. You got to have some white space. You could fill all of it, that works. But if there's scatter and lots of space between dried flowers or details, the eye will see the difference, especially since our eyes register movement from left to right. Just FYI, it's a proven fact. Why are some paintings considered ingenious, some drawings historically successful? Because artists know eye movement tricks, how the eye observes work, sees proportions. You should try to follow these. I wouldn't call them rules because I dislike rules in art. But there are certain preconditions. Let's call them that, and you can follow them. This can help your work look more coherent. All right, folks, I have filled. Now I'll let it sit for 3 hours to let my resin polymerize. Next up are clouds. So folks, on to step 2. I just made up some medium resin, Art Pro from Resin Pro, divided into 2 cups. I'll color it with white and blue alcohol inks, blue inks. Where's my bottle? Just trust me, it's a little worn out from travel. These are the inks, the blue ones. I'll dye the resin with them, just need a tiny bit. They're bright enough, give it a good shake before using, and well mixed. To get this effect, best do it with thick resin or medium resin with some viscosity. By that, I mean not freshly mixed live resin. There's a thing called live resin, the one we freshly mix. You should know the lifespan of your resin, the one you work with. You got to know the time it starts polymerizing, and then nothing can be done with it. It's usually 30 minutes to an hour and a half. The time it starts polymerizing, when you can't do anything with it anymore, around 30 to 90 minutes. That's why I want it to thicken up a bit, so the next layer won't soak in and ruin the dried flowers. We need to let it sit for a while before starting the process. Mix the resin and let it sit on the heater for a bit. At 28 degrees, it's like warm tea now. Don't do anything with it yet. It should be really hot. I'm pouring blue resin. Don't fill it completely. Leave some room for white resin. Look at the vibrant ink color. Now I'm going to color the white resin. I have white pigment from the company Resin Pro. I have around 20 grams of resin and I'm adding 10 drops of pigment. We need a pretty dense color for this technique that completely hides everything behind it. That's to say you won't see anything through it. It should be so dense that we can't see anything beyond it. If it's not that dense, it won't work, so choose your pigments carefully. If you don't mix the pigment in the resin well, it won't dry properly and it'll ruin your stuff. You'll have to sand it down and start over, so better mix it well from the start. Resin gets really hot. You can trim down the sides to better control the pour. When you start pouring, control the flow. See, the resin is pouring out. When it's hard, turn the adjusters. I asked to leave space so you have room. You can do this a couple of times if you have room. So we turn the adjusters. We stop. See how resin pulls into the center, leaving the edges free? Wait till it shrinks, then you can go again. As the resin shrinks, it is amazing. Won't touch the little fairy, as she is already filled to the top. I'll do the mittens again, turning the loops. Then let it polymerize. Now for the sides, the seal and finish. Before we coat the finish, we need to sand the surface. Get some P320 sandpaper or a nail buffer and sand it nicely. Get rid of the sticky layer, shine, and any imperfections. Then we can cover the edges with gold leaf and our toys with a finished layer. I have detailed how-tos on gold leaf on YouTube and another lesson on my page where I show everything. But to save time here, spray paint in a can. We spray into a cup and add floating gold and silver, whichever color you want. Stir it well, let it sit for about 8 to 10 seconds. Then with a wide brush, number 12 or 8, you can use a smaller one. 8. Apply a gold leaf, it won't float. If anyone's worried about floating gold, nothing floats. The spray paint dries very quickly. Let it dry well. And as for applying the finish, the most important rule, the resin needs to be heated. I place it near a heater. Some people heat it under water, closed cans, heat the water, then combine resin's 2 components. And a hardener. Let the bubbles come out, meaning when it sits near heat, the bubbles will come out well. It will become viscous, and only when it's viscous will the resin be obedient for finishing. And don't skimp on it. You should apply the resin well with a sponge. If you skimp, it'll settle unevenly, like oily spots. If you didn't sand it with sandpaper or a buffer, the same will happen. So don't save on resin. Apply it to the center with the sponge vigorously. Watch how it moves. At first don't touch it, then take a little from the top. Don't scratch the mold, and carefully push it towards the edges. When you're approaching the edge, lift the tip slightly. When you've spread all the resin, take a little, pull it up and go closer to the edge, because the resin shrinks to the center, and sometimes the edges are bare. However, we always remember that we have to apply it like a blanket. It shouldn't be too thin. Don't rush to remove the bubbles. If you start removing the bubbles with the torch immediately, it can soften the resin and it may run. So I wait for about 8 to 10 minutes and watch. Then carefully, with quick movements, 25 to 30 cm away from the mold surface, I go over it with a torch and voila. Check out these cuties and look how awesome the gold leaf looks, just like melted gold. Can't wait to see your works. Be sure to tag me. Show me what you've got. Have a great day, everyone.